You're not a kind person. You're just someone who's never dared to face the darkest parts of yourself. You're not at peace. You've just gotten used to living behind a shell of control, fear, and avoidance. And you're not strong. You've just gotten good at running away. Every time your darkness begins to surface, we were raised in a world that taught us to be good, to be nice, to hide anything that wasn't pretty. And that is what's been killing you from the inside. Carl Jung called it the shadow. No one taught you about it in school. No one showed you how to face it when you were young. You were taught that anger is bad, jealousy is sinful, desire is shameful. So you stuffed everything that didn't fit the image of a good person into a closet inside your soul and locked it up. You thought that was the end of it. You thought that if you didn't speak it, it wouldn't exist. You thought if you put on a smile, the rage inside would quietly disappear. You thought you could live a clean life simply by refusing to look at the pile of rot in your mind. But you were wrong. Darkness doesn't disappear when you turn away. It only shapeshifts. It will silently follow you. And then, when you least expect it, it will destroy the very things you were trying to protect. The shadow doesn't need your support. It only needs your denial. It will hide in your soft-spoken sarcasm. It will slip into your eyes when you're secretly jealous of someone's success. It will wait to explode the moment someone touches a fear you've never dared to name. You think you're loving until you realize you can't stand other people's happiness. You think you've forgiven until a silent rage makes you wish someone would suffer. You think you've matured until a single careless comment makes you lose control. That's not your personality. That's the shadow speaking for you. Jung once said something that shattered every illusion of self-awareness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that is exactly what's happening to millions of modern people. We live behind masks. We work behind masks. We fall in love behind masks. Sometimes, we even cry behind masks, only allowing tears for acceptable reasons. We don't know what we're really angry about. We don't know who we're jealous of. We don't know why we keep failing in love, in work, or in self-worth. And we call it destiny. But it's not destiny. It's not fate. It's just that you've let the shadow decide everything, while thinking you're the one in control. The more you try to be a good person, the more room the shadow has to hide. The more you try to be reasonable, kind, moral, the more your repressed instincts will erupt in uncontrollable ways. Unspoken fear becomes unexplained anger. Unhealed shame becomes quiet, self-loathing. Unfaced selfishness disguises itself as love. The shadow doesn't show up to ruin you. It shows up to make you honest. It comes to ask you one question. Do you have the courage to see all of yourself, even the part you once wanted to kill? If you dare to look, it becomes your ally. If you continue to ignore it, it becomes your most dangerous enemy, because it lives inside you. And no one can save you from what's living inside of you. That's why you need to stay until the end of this video. Because most people don't fail from lack of skill, or lack of love, or lack of effort. They fail because they've never understood their own shadow. And a person who doesn't understand themselves will eventually be devoured by themselves. Have you ever asked yourself, what part of myself do I secretly hate, but never admit? Or, what feeling have I repressed for so long, that now it's controlling me from the inside? We often believe our problems are caused by others, an insensitive partner, an unfair boss, strict parents, betraying friends. But very few people have the courage to step back and ask themselves directly, what am I holding on to that's keeping me stuck? There's a disturbing truth. It's not that the world out there is too cruel. It's that your inner world is too chaotic. and you refuse to face it. What are you avoiding? Is it jealousy toward your friend who's more successful? Is it sexual desire you've repressed for years because you were taught it was dirty? Is it the anger you never voiced, but that flares up every time someone challenges you? Or is it the shame of once being weak, jealous, selfish, and now you feel the need to build a perfect version of yourself just to survive? You think you're living by willpower, but you're not. You're just living out of habits of hiding. Carl Jung called this shadow possession, when your darkness takes over, shaping your emotions, actions, and choices without your awareness. It doesn't come as a scream. It comes as exhaustion with no clear cause, as unease with no name, as the same destructive reaction patterns, even when you know better, but still can't stop. You lash out at your partner, not because they're wrong, but because you can't handle no longer being the center of attention. You feel hurt by feedback, not because it's cruel, but because you've never learned to separate opinions from personal rejection. You despise authentic people because their honesty exposes the mask you're wearing. You're not lazy. You're just fighting yourself because a part of you doesn't believe you deserve success. And so you destroy everything you build. You don't crave love. You just need someone to accept your shadow instead of making you hide it. But here's the brutal paradox. No one can accept the shadow in you if you don't dare to look at it yourself. You can't expect others to understand you while you're still living a life that's never been honest with yourself. You can't ask someone to heal you when the wound inside you is still being denied. You can't seek validation while building your identity on escape. You can avoid this for a long time. You can bury it in work, mask it with love, hide it behind ideals, wrap it in morality. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It just changes form. And over time, it forces you to live two lives: an external life, kind, rational, successful, and an internal life, jealous, empty, exhausted. You'll smile while silence cries inside. You'll say, "I love you," while inside you panic at the thought of being abandoned. You'll forgive, but deep down still wish they suffer for what they did. And slowly, you'll forget what's real in you and what's just a mask. Jung never said we must kill the shadow. He said, the shadow must be faced, integrated, not destroyed, because the shadow isn't evil. It's just the part of your humanity that you've rejected for far too long. It needs to be seen, heard, named, and only then will it stop haunting you. Avoidance isn't innocent. It's a choice to surrender. You can't control the shadow because you've never dared to look it in the eye, and so you spend your life cleaning up the consequences of things you don't understand. So the question now is not, do I have a shadow? But rather, how long has my shadow been running my life? Don't answer too quickly. Keep that question with you and let it lead you into the next part. Because if you're done living in conflict, pretense, and silent pain, then it's time to face yourself from the deepest layer. Do you remember that moment? The moment you smiled, but inside, you wanted to scream from the pain. The moment you nodded in agreement, even though every cell in your body resisted. The moment you said, "It's okay," but stayed up all night over one sentence. No one taught you how to live truthfully. They only taught you how to live in a way that pleases others. Since childhood, you've learned an unspoken rule. To be loved, you must be obedient. To be accepted, you must fit in. To stay safe, don't upset anyone. And so, you started building your personality through avoidance. Avoiding conflict, avoiding disappointment, avoiding the exposure of anything unpleasant within you. You hid your anger, you hid your shame, you hid your jealousy. your sadness, your wild cravings, the most human parts of you. Over time, you forgot what you used to enjoy. You no longer knew which feelings were truly yours, and which ones you felt because you were supposed to. You looked in the mirror, and no longer recognized the person looking back. You're not the only one. This modern world is producing a generation of emotionally drained people, even though they look fine on the outside. They are successful. They are capable. They know how to speak, how to respond, how to earn. But at night, they open YouTube and type, "Why do I always feel empty? Why can't I feel anything anymore? Who am I in my own life?" The answer is this: you've drained yourself, trying to please a world that doesn't even know who you are. You traded honesty for peace. You silenced the parts of you that didn't make sense. The anger, the greed, the weakness, the craving for rebellion. But those parts didn't die. They were just locked away, deep in your unconscious. And you can't lock away something alive forever. One day, it will find a way to break out. It will become the addiction you can't control, the lie in your relationship, the impulsive decision that ruins your career, or worse, the silent depression no one sees. You say, "I don't know why I did that." But deep down, you do. You just don't want to face the truth. You've never lived in alignment with who you really are. You're the one who always helps others, but secretly feels used. You're kind to everyone, but alone at night wondering, who's kind to me? You give your best, but never feel like it's enough. Why? Because you're living off balance. You're living only in the light and the shadow. You ignore it, reject it, label it as wrong. Jung never taught you to eliminate the darkness. He taught you to bring it into the light and learn how to speak with it, not to justify it, but to understand it, because only through understanding can you finally stop hurting yourself. You might think, "I don't have a shadow. I'm not angry. I'm a good person." But good isn't always virtue. Sometimes it's just the result of being tamed. You were taught that anger is wrong, that asking for what you want is selfish, that feeling pain is weakness, so you made emotion your enemy. You made your instincts something to be ashamed of. You stopped speaking your truth because you were afraid of being left. You stopped saying no because you were afraid of being disliked. You stopped loving fully because you were afraid of getting hurt. You live inside the shell that society calls stability, but inside, your soul is rotting, because nothing is more exhausting than pretending to be okay every single day. Have you ever felt that? You smile, but don't feel joy. You socialize, but feel empty. You work, but feel meaningless. You succeed, but don't feel happy. That's when the shadow comes knocking, not to hurt you, but to wake you up. You've abandoned yourself for too long. It doesn't need you to do anything extreme. It just needs you to look within and admit what you've been denying. Who are you angry at? What are you jealous of? Are you living like a copy just to please someone else? What part of you are you still hiding because you're afraid they won't accept it? Ask and listen, because it's from these questions that you'll begin the journey back to your true self. I want to tell you the story of a man named Thomas. Thomas was the image of a model man in society's eyes. Quiet, hardworking, never raised his voice, always helped others, behaved properly, always in control of his emotions. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he had no scandals. Everyone said, men like Thomas are rare these days. And Thomas believed that too. He believed he was doing the right thing, living well, hurting no one, staying out of trouble. Until one day, Thomas slapped his child. A hard slap, so forceful that his 6-year-old fell back onto the floor. All the child had done was spill a glass of water. The boy didn't cry. He looked at his father with a frightened gaze. Thomas would never forget. Thomas froze, staring at his hand, stunned, panicked, and then a wave of shame rose to his throat. He apologized to his son. He said it was just a moment of lost control. He swore it would never happen again. But that night, after his wife and child had gone to bed, Thomas sat alone in the living room and cried, not from guilt, but from fear, because for the first time in his life, he saw a part of himself he never knew existed, a part that was angry, a part that was violent, a part that could hurt someone, even for a second. He didn't understand what had just happened. He thought he was a calm man. He thought he'd never be like his father, who used to beat him as a child. And then a thought sliced through him like a blade. I am repeating the very thing I once hated. But what was the truth? The truth was that Thomas had never truly faced his own wounds. He had simply labeled them as kindness. He suppressed every bit of rage from his childhood. He covered his pain with a cloth of morality. But you can't cover pain with goodness. You're just creating a beautiful shadow, letting the real darkness hide deeper. Thomas was a good man, until the shadow, repressed for too long, exploded. That's what Carl Jung warned us about. The brighter the persona, the darker the shadow. Thomas spent his life trying to be the ideal husband, the model father, the responsible employee. But he had never dared to admit that. He resented his father. He once wanted revenge. He felt jealous of those who were loved. He wanted to run away from his family. He felt weak. And because of that, he constantly tried to control everything. The slap didn't come from action. It came from unspoken pain, buried too long. Thomas wasn't a bad person. He was simply a man unaware that he was living with a shadow. After that incident, Thomas started therapy. It took him 2 years to even mention his father, 3 years to write down the thoughts he believed he should never think. And not until the 5th year did he finally say to his son, I used to be very angry, but I never said it out loud. I'm sorry for letting silence turn into violence. Thomas didn't become a perfect man after that, but he became a more honest one. He no longer tried to hide the shadow within him. He learned how to observe it, to name his emotions before they became behaviors, to apologize when he saw himself repeating old patterns. And most importantly, he taught his child what he was never taught himself. You don't have to be a good kid. You just need to be yourself. Even when you're angry, even when you're sad, I won't leave you. Because of those dark parts, Thomas's story isn't a tragedy. It's a wake-up call that if you keep denying your shadow, one day it will destroy the things you love most. Not out of malice, but out of unconsciousness. The more you force yourself to be good, the more the shadow looks for ways to erupt. The more you pretend to be strong, the more your weakness shows up in the wrong places. The more reasonable you try to be, the louder your instincts demand to be heard. And if you don't learn to listen to your shadow, someone else will pay the price for your silence. What is the shadow? It is not evil. It is not a bad trait. It is not something you need to destroy. The shadow is everything you've ever rejected, denied, locked away, simply because it didn't fit the image of the good person you're trying to become. The shadow is what you don't dare say out loud. It's the anger you swallow every time you're treated unfairly. It's the envy you hide when someone else gets what you deeply crave. It's the quiet disdain for the things you wish you could become but can't. It's the desire you suppress because you're afraid of being judged. It's your original self, once silenced just to be loved. You think you're mature, calm, and reasonable, but you don't realize all of that is being built on a rotting wooden floor. And when the mask falls, you realize you never truly knew yourself. Carl Jung once said, The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. Understanding the shadow isn't for the weak, it's for the brave, because it doesn't ask you to become someone better. It demands that you be radically honest about what's truly going on inside you. You don't need anyone to forgive your shadow, but you do need to stop judging it yourself. The biggest mistake people make is trying to kill the shadow with reason, morality, or belief. They think, I'm not allowed to be angry. I'm not allowed to be jealous. I must always be kind, and they succeed on the surface. But that suppression quietly breeds toxic mutations. Anger turns into bitterness. Jealousy turns into sabotage. Weakness turns into control. Loneliness turns into dependency. You stop living as yourself. You start living as an acceptable version of yourself. But Stoicism doesn't teach you to live for approval. Stoicism teaches you to accept truth, even when it's not pretty. Epictetus said, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them, and that applies to the shadow within. 2. You don't suffer because you have anger, jealousy, or flaws. You suffer because you despise their existence. Instead of learning how to understand and manage them, the shadow only becomes dangerous when you pretend it doesn't exist. Why? Because what is denied will always find another way to speak. You don't notice it, but your shadow is deciding who you fall in love with, who you resent, how you react when hurt, what job you choose, how you respond to criticism, how you treat yourself when you fail. The more you suppress it, the more it acts out through unconscious behaviors. You say you don't envy anyone, but you gossip behind their back. You say you're kind, but feel resentful when others don't appreciate it. You say you don't need validation, but lose sleep over a single criticism. All of that is the voice of the shadow, not to condemn, but to recognize. Jung didn't ask you to eliminate the shadow. He asked you to integrate it, consciously. Why? Because within the shadow, there isn't just darkness. There's power you once buried. Maybe you were scolded for being honest, so you became afraid of truth. Maybe you were hurt for loving too much, so now you've turned cold. Maybe you were called selfish for putting yourself first, so now you please everyone. But that's not you. That's the shadow you created, just to survive. And here lies the paradox. The more you try to be good, the more you lose your real self. Kindness isn't truly powerful. If it's built on fear, the shadow teaches you this. Being honest with yourself matters more than being accepted by others. You don't need to become perfect. You just need to know who's speaking within you and who's driving your life. Is it your conscious self or your unconscious shadow? Is it your intention or your old reaction? Is it your real belief or your fear in disguise? At this point, you have to choose, not between light and darkness, but between separation and integration. Only when you accept that you are both light and shadow do you begin the true journey of becoming whole. That is the message Jung left for anyone brave enough to stop trying to be good and start being real. You are not a bad person. You're just someone who's been hurt and hasn't yet learned how to listen to your darker side. You're not to blame. You were simply never taught. There's a part of you that doesn't need to be destroyed, but understood. You don't need to force yourself to be nice. You just need the courage to be honest. The more you avoid the shadow, the more it takes control. The more you face it, the more it becomes your ally. This is not theory. This is reality. Millions of people are self-destructing simply because they don't understand what's happening inside them. Someone says they love, but keeps ruining every relationship. Someone says they're grateful, but deep down feels jealous. Someone says they're at peace, but lies awake every night, anxious, lost, and restless. No, they're not fake. They're just living with a shadow they've never acknowledged. No, you're not weak. You're just exhausted from carrying an image you no longer believe in. No, you haven't failed. You're just repeating unconscious cycles and calling it bad luck. You don't need others to understand you. You just need to stop expecting that from those who never truly did. You don't need to prove you're okay. You just need to pause and truly see what's operating inside you. You don't need artificial light. You need a truth dark enough to stop lying to yourself. Remember, the shadow doesn't destroy you. Denying the shadow is what causes you to self-destruct. You can't heal if you keep calling your wounds no big deal. You can't grow if you still believe that effort alone will help you live authentically. You can't move forward if you keep dragging the shadow with you without ever stopping to ask, how long have I been dishonest with myself? You may have made mistakes. You may have hurt others. You may have lived a lie, worn a mask, betrayed yourself. But the moment you start naming the truth, the moment you say, I have a shadow, I have anger, I have envy, I have selfishness, is the moment your journey back to yourself begins. The more you hide it, the more it consumes you. The more you face it, the less it harms you. Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, and that's what you're doing. Right now, by listening this far, you're doing the hardest thing that most people avoid. Being honest with yourself, not to be praised, not to be forgiven, but so you can stop living out of alignment and start living in truth. No one rescues you from the shadow, only you, in awareness, can pull yourself out of the old cycle. And that awareness begins with a simple sentence. I don't want to live like this anymore. You've been silent long enough. But this time, don't use that silence to endure. Use it to stand tall. You no longer need to keep running. No need to pretend to be someone else. No need to keep trying to be correct, perfect, or reasonable. Just one thing matters. Come back to yourself. Even if that place still holds darkness, don't be afraid of what you see. Don't be afraid of the rawness inside you. Don't be afraid of the ugly emotions you once tried to bury. They're a part of you, and you can't truly live. If you keep living without a piece of your own being, you can begin again. You don't need permission. You don't have to wait for the right moment. You just need enough stillness to listen. Listen to the old insecurities. Listen to the unspoken rage. Listen to the envy you once labeled irrational. Listen to the animal, the human, the real, the raw, the parts of you you've denied for years. Not to let them control you, but to understand who you truly are. You are not pure light. You are not complete darkness either. You are the blending of everything that has ever lived inside you. And freedom doesn't come from cutting out one side or the other. It comes from this. Do you dare to touch all of it without running anymore? If there's still something stuck in your throat, if there's still a part of you that feels unclear, messy, lost, don't try to forget. Don't try to analyze. Don't rush to heal. Just be still. For a moment, look it in the eye, the way you'd look at someone you once loved, but who has walked away. No hatred, no clinging, just to say one thing, I see you now, and I'll keep going. But as myself, fully. If you've made it to the end of this video, then you're probably done living a half-life. And if we're meant to cross paths again, we'll meet on the next part of this journey. Next video invitation. If you've ever felt too emotional, too intense, too sensitive, and people have told you, you're too much, you're too fragile, you're too dramatic, Watch the next video in the Carl Jung series. You're not too much. They were never ready. Because sometimes your shadow isn't what needs fixing. It's the most honest part of you that the world wasn't deep enough to understand